Revere's place was and all that. So, and that made a big difference. And these are both huge, massive, elevated freeways that had like 4 lanes in each direction, 8 lanes, you know, huge, wide things. I have to agree with you, Dwayne. I think, and in fact, when I was in the House, I used to talk about just use the freeway. One, it doesn't cost anything, because the federal government is paying for 1/3 to let us use their land. It doesn't make it any uglier than it already is. And the other thing I liked is you could put the rail station and a parking structure on top of the freeway. So cars could actually drive up there and park, and then take the train. And if you go to DC, the metro that they built there, they're now building a line that goes out to Dulles. And while Sarah Preble, Dwayne's wife, talked about how it's elevated, and it is in parts, it goes between the Meadow strip of the freeway with the stations above it, and it looks like an overpass, but it's not. It's a parking garage in the stations. And the simple answer is that when the study was done for the alignment of the route, and working with the Federal Transit Administration and doing the FEIS, the Final Environmental Impact Statement, they said the route should be closer to the sea because more homes, more buildings were there, and they were trying to run it through the densest part of the urban corridor so that people could walk or take short rides to the stations. And that's, you know, this issue, you hear Ben talk about it. Our city is not populated enough to handle a rail system. We're not Shanghai, New York, Paris, London, and we're not. We don't have the population anywhere close to that. But we're one of the most densely urban areas in the country in the urban core because we're squeezed between the mountain and the sea. And so they said the route should go Mackay of the freeway, and it does. And so that's the answer. I don't know if it's even me, I still think it should be there, but they said if it was, you'd have less ridership. And to build a system at 5.5, you want a lot of ridership. So that's where it is now. In terms of visual light, you know, the perfect system would be underground. And Barack Obama, when he was running, used to talk about the perfect versus the good, and he'd always say, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. And the way I equate it is, I know when we first got married and we were going to buy our house in Manoa, we couldn't buy one here, we're renting. So we had to move into Kaniki for a while. But I always wanted a house that I thought was perfect, but I couldn't afford it. Because the perfect house was more expensive. I had to wait, you know, until we worked harder and saved more. And we did get a house that we think is, I think is perfect. The point is that we're building a system that's the right system that we can afford. But it isn't perfect, I wouldn't say it is, and I'm going to tell you there is blight. But the job is to make sure there's less of it by designing it so the footprint is small, that the columns are done in ways that, you know, with scrolling on the sides, that it's as small as possible. For the most part, it's about 30 feet in the air and 26 feet wide. So it's not 4 lanes of freeway each way. Ben talks about that. And he also talks about it being a battleship in the sky at the train stations. It's not. It's just not. He's playing on our fear. I'm not saying it isn't going to be visually delightful. It is. And if I could have it my way, the one thing I would do differently, and I'd like to see if we can, is when it gets into town, is there a way to do it so that we could go underground at some point? So we can actually know whether we build it that way now. Now I don't think at grade is the way to go, because the minute you're on the ground with traffic, you can go no faster than traffic. And anyone want to know why? Anyone want to volunteer why you can't go any faster when you're on the ground than the fastest car or bus? Because even though you're on a track, separate, there are stoplights. And you got to stop somewhere. And when you stop, in Chinatown, for example, if we're going to be on the ground in town, small city blocks, the Okole in the front of the train is going to hang off into this next street because we have very small city blocks. We're not like mainland cities. You're going to cause gridlock. So the way our system is guaranteed to go at 30 miles an hour average speed and to move people no matter what's happening, rain, sun, earthquake, not earthquake, but anything weather related or a traffic accident, is it has to be underground or above the ground so traffic doesn't affect it. And so that's the system we're building, Dwayne, and I'm troubled. And it's going to go right in the front of Bishop Street, right between our beautiful waterfront, Aloha Tower Marketplace. And if there's a way that it could go underground there, spend a little bit more money. One way to do that, by the way, is to come back to the taxpayer and say, would you agree to extending the tax that we're all paying right now for a number of years more so we can pay more to put it underground? And if the people of this community believe that it's important to do so, I think they would support that. And I'd ask that question. I think it's worth the dialogue and the engagement on it. Because to make things better, it's going to cost more. I think it's worth it, by the way. Personally, I'd vote for that. Okay? Yes. Now I got Sarah. Come up, Sarah. Come.